Today I want to talk about the state of flow and how it applies to language learning. Now, some of you may have heard of this concept of the state of flow, this sense that people who, say, violinists or chess players or artists, Michelangelo painting the ceiling at the Sistine Chapel, I think it is, who are so engrossed in what they're doing that they are in another world, and that this enables them to perform better than would otherwise be the case because they're totally focused. The concept of state of flow was originally described by a gentleman by the name of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, I believe is the pronunciation in Hungarian, although he was born in what was then Fiume, Italy, and is now Rijeka, Croatia, to a Hungarian family, and he ended up in the States, and he wrote about this phenomenon of people being so engrossed in what they're doing that they achieve a level of expertise, mastery in whatever it is that they're doing. And he described this as the conditions necessary for flow is that there should be a sufficient challenge, that the task should be sufficiently difficult and meaningful to the person doing it, and yet it was not too difficult. So it's that sort of space between things that are too easy, not a challenge, boring, and things that are genuinely a challenge, meaningful to the person doing it, and yet somehow the person, through mastery, through having the requisite skill set, is able to do what it is that he or she wanted to do. So that, to my mind, as I understand it, is this concept of flow, which enables us to do more than we would otherwise do than when we're not in that state of flow. It makes us better learners, period, even when we leave that state of flow. And that's what I want to talk about today in terms of how it applies to language learning. The most obvious way that we can control the level of attraction and confidence that we have in doing a task is by choosing an activity that we want to do, an activity that is meaningful to us, that is slightly difficult for us. So this can mean choosing content of interest, this idea of compelling input. It also means that we can regularly adjust that level of difficulty as we progress in the language, constantly giving ourselves more challenging material, but always material that is meaningful to us, so that in a sense, dealing with this meaningful and challenging input is in itself a reward beyond whatever we manage to achieve in terms of learning the language. While we are engaged with this meaningful content, we have this sense of flow. We are lost in the language that we are listening to or reading, or if we're in a conversation with people and we're speaking at a level that we hadn't achieved before, we have that sense of achievement, that sense of flow. But we have the ability, as we move and progress in the language, we have the ability to control that gap between the truly difficult and the truly easy and boring. So in a way, ironically, this transplanted Hungarian is sort of reflecting what Lon Cato used to say: success in language learning is a factor of our motivation, in other words, that sense of wanting to do it and being confident we can do it, but with the minimum amount of distraction or inhibition or other negative influences, all, let's say, over a common denominator of time. So with the flow, it's very similar. We want to have something that is genuinely attractive to us. We feel we can do it, and we want to minimize distractions, negative thoughts, things that distract us from being in that state of flow. To get to that state of flow where we're handling genuinely challenging material in the language or challenging tasks, we have to get there. There is a scaffolding process. When I think of, say, skiing down a hill, if I'm going down a steep hill with lots of moguls, I'm only focused on skiing down that hill. I'm not thinking about other things. I'm not thinking about language learning. I am focused on that descent, right? But if it's an easy hill and I'm kind of slowly, skiing down this blue run, this easy run, I have all kinds of time to think about other things. But when I'm in that steep descent, I'm thinking about the next mogul and how can I avoid falling. Another example from my own experience, again in sports, is when you're playing ice hockey, I'm totally focused on where the other players are, on my team, on the other team, and I have no time to think about other things. So in a sense, I am in a state of flow. But obviously, you have to get there. You have to learn how to ski. you have to start with easier hills. You have to learn how to skate in order to play hockey. And similarly, in language learning, you have to begin, as I always do at Link, I begin with the mini stories. You have to build up your capability, but you can always try to maintain that tension that the task is a little difficult for you, even if initially the stories are not that interesting because you have to get started somewhere. But eventually, to maintain the tension, that state of flow, I have to engage with genuinely meaningful content, even though it is more difficult than what I used to do. Now, the state of flow is not permanent. Csikszentmihalyi even admits that people fall out of this state of flow. I mean, maybe Michelangelo goes and has a cup of coffee every now and again. A violinist has to rest. There are times when whatever task it is can seem boring or humdrum. And so how do we maintain that level of, commitment to the task? In other words, we have to avoid distractions. And that's where I think it's very important that we have a value system that says, this is important to me. I want to be doing this. I don't want to be doing something else. This is what I want to be doing. Now, this can fade in and out if I'm listening while doing other tasks around the house, but I nevertheless feel, based on my value system, that this is an activity that I want to be doing. Similarly, I can decide if I want to be reviewing words, or if I want to be listening more, or if I want to be taking on new material with more unknown words, say at Link. Is this what I want to be doing? Do I want to go into sentence mode where I slow down the amount of new words that I'm encountering in order to focus in on them, with greater concentration? These are decisions that I make, and I vary them, because I think another element of staying in that state of flow is to be aware of some of the other things that generate enthusiasm and dopamine in our brains, and that is variety, varying the activities that I do. Similarly, any kind of gamification or even unpredictability is also, very gratifying for the brain. That's one of the reasons for the success of Duolingo. And Duolingo, by the way, can be an excellent way of scaffolding up to a level where eventually you can leave Duolingo and engage with more meaningful content, so that you're always maintaining that tension, that the task is always a little difficult, not boring, but you're at a level where you can cope. Also, because each one of these activities is different in so many ways. Not everyone is a concert pianist. Not everyone is a chess player. Not everyone skis down hills. And so language learning in that regard is different. One of the things that language learning has, which is different from other activities, is the way in which we connect with other people. The connection to content, the connection to the sounds of the language, the structure of the language, which we may find appealing, connection to other people. All of these sort of social interaction, empathy factors in language learning are additional ways in which, if we combine that with getting ourselves in the sort of state of flow, all of that can help us in our language learning. And I think we have to be realistic that we can't constantly expect to be in a state of flow. Even if I'm skiing down a steep hill, I eventually get to the bottom of the hill, get back on the chairlift, I'm resting now. So I think we have to pace ourselves a little bit. Periods of intense engaging with meaningful content, say difficult content, a sense of achievement that we're able to understand a lot of what we're listening to, giving ourselves credit for what we do understand. And yet at times we may have to relax, take a break, maybe deal with some easier content so that we can manage. I think at every level we can manage how much tension there is between the challenge and the ease with which we can achieve these tasks. So I think this concept of flow, which has been widely studied, and you can search for more information on this as it applies to athletic performance, as it applies to artists, and maybe you can find ways yourself that you can apply that to language learning. As an example, I drafted out a bunch of ideas, and I did a lot of research on the internet about this subject, and I had all these bits of information and links and so forth in a Google document. And then I took that Google document and I went to NotebookLM and I said, please translate this into Persian for me, which NotebookLM did. Then I asked NotebookLM to produce a dialogue in Persian on the same subject. Now I can import that into Link to Study. Now, of course, I'm very curious to hear what NotebookLM had to say on this subject. So it's difficult for me. It's difficult, but I'm very motivated. It's something that I want to do. It matches up with my value system, with my self-reward, things that I want to do. And so I'm totally engrossed in this because it's also things that I had drafted up based on things that I found on the internet in English, and now I get them in Persian. So the whole thing is just an example of how you can create content that's basically suitable for studying in a sort of state of flow way. So I hope you found that interesting. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.